doing?
Okay, we're in the A room at Blackbird. We have a Neve 8078. The console's kind of the brain of the whole session. It looks like a lot of knobs, but it's the same thing over and over repeated, at least on the first 40 channels. Basically, each channel is for a microphone that's out on the floor recording. Kick drum. Let's say you have an inside the kick mic, an outside the kick mic, a snare top, a snare bottom, a hi-hat, rack, floor, overhead, overhead, room, chamber, bass. And then you get into acoustic and vocals and piano and whatever other instruments you're recording. You want to be able to manipulate any of these microphones if you need to, which generally here you don't need to because we have such an incredible inventory of great mics. But not everyone wants a record that just sounds like beautiful everything. They want to manipulate things so they sound different. And that is where the patch bay, which is over here, comes into play. The patch bay it interconnects every piece of gear in this room to this mixing board. So if you want to insert a compressor on a certain input, you'll patch from that input into the compressor, out of the compressor, back into the return of that channel, so that you can listen to that channel with compression, or you can bypass it and listen to it without. What you're looking at right now are some Telefunken mic pre's, which I'm a big fan of. There's also a few other pieces of gear in there, some stuff we use for the monitor system, and some converters. But we love old Telefunken mic pre's. We have 140 or so tube Telefunken pre's. In this rack behind, which is called the producer's desk, there are compressors, EQs, channel strips with mic pre's and EQ on them. Well, that's mainly what's in this rack. Compressors and EQs. And the rack off to the left, which we'll get to in just a second, is a rack of some effects like reverbs and delays, and more channel strips, and more EQs, and more compressors. These are tools that are used in the studio and are very, very important. These are Neve channel strips. If you don't like this version of the Neve console, these are from a different console. These are digital delays. This is a harmonizer. More reverbs, an old 200, which I love. Yamaha Rev 5, maybe? Yeah. And some old AMS delay and a reverb. There's Neve compressor 2254 models here. There's Pultec Blackface. There's EMI EQs. These EMI EQs are probably my favorite EQ that exists on Earth today, outside of maybe the curve bender. But it's solid state, but it's absolutely the greatest component. And I can take a frequency I hate, like 3K in general, 3.2K, and it's got that setting, and I can boost it, and I like it better. It's just beautiful. It's so musical sounding. You have speakers that are on top of the console, small pairs to help, well, just depends on what you're used to listening to. A lot of people use NS10s. They're not the greatest sounding speaker, but once you learn what they sound like, it really works well. The Gentle X are a little more hi-fi, and then we have ATCs up in the wall for when the record company comes in, or maybe on a tracking day I like to use the ATCs because you get to hear all the low end and all the top end, and they're really accurate. In the little vocal booth off to the right, there's the Telefunken 251, the one I talked about earlier, serial number 584. That's my favorite Telefunken 251 on planet Earth, and it sounds godlike.
Hey Jeff, when you get that, come back in here and I'm going to ask him a question about the tracking room and capturing their performance.
Okay, yeah. But you know what? Let's walk out on the floor.
Okay, great.
Come on right this way.
What? Oh, I left that right in the way.
These doors, they're the equivalent to a foot of concrete for sound isolation, which is pretty incredible, but that's why they're so heavy. Yeah, they're heavy. But check it out. I'm going to talk in here. I'm just going to count to 10, and I'm going to start with the door closed, and I'll open it. And I won't change my volume, I promise. 5, 6, 7, 8. You see how well that isolates? I love it. Okay, come on in. Shit. This used to be the backyard, and I wanted a big room so that we could do string sessions, etc. So we basically built to the property line, which worked out great. But I didn't want to have a big room that sounded the same all the time. So we had these panels built by a company called, I think it's PRG. It's Peter D'Antonio. He's the physicist behind it. When they're closed,
Oh, wow. Right.
it's absorptive.
Yeah.
And when they're open, it's reflective. Now you hear the tone of my voice and the timbre and all that? No, you close this. And then you hear my voice. And now it sounds a little duller, a little less reflective. Because it is less reflective, because now we're absorbing instead of reflecting
That
sound.
is so cool. That is so cool.
We have a live reverb chamber right here. This is a room that's built to sound like reverb. So, hey! So you hear that decay time. Now what's unique about this room is we made it where the ceiling goes up and down. So you can change the reverb time. Yeah.
Holy cow.
It's kind of crazy. But you know what? I've got to figure out why that earlier. It's right now not as high as it goes, but almost. But listen, that's nice. So you bring it down to here, and it sounds like you're in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
There's no two parallel walls. There's not a parallel floor and ceiling. It's all hard plaster. There's no corners. Everything's rounded, and it just sounds great in here. When we have a drum kit out on the floor, we'll put a stereo mic in here, and it picks up all the reflections of the drum kit. So if you blend that back in with the drum kit, you go from being in a room to being in a gymnasium or a stadium, whatever, by how much reverb you add back in.
This is like a playground.
The beautiful part is, if your reverb's too bright, okay, sorry. You know what we should do? We should go back real quick because they got a lot of drums down here. Here's another chamber. This one's bigger, so you get a longer and even longer decay time. So you watch yourself walking through here because there's a lot of cables. This is Foy Vance's recording session, which is kind of crazy, which I love. Up on top is a lot of gear that is kind of just overflow. This room is full of guitar amps. I wish we had time. Hey guys.
How you doing?
Hope you don't mind me in a film here. How's it going? Good. So if you went in your control room and you didn't find what you wanted, you come into this room where you've got some gear, and then some more gear, and some more gear, and a little more gear back here. And it's just different colors of the palette, basically. Different flavors of audio. All these different pieces of gear. You know, one of the great things about having all these tools to do the job, you know, it seems like in the past we would capture a performance, and today, more often than not, we're creating a performance by flying the first chorus to the second chorus and the third verse to the first verse because it was played better. I think that's a step backwards as opposed to a step forwards personally. But it's just a point I feel like needs to be made, you know. In here we have more gear. I love these RCA mic pre's that are BA11As. We've got a few Motown EQs. One's being used for Martina right now. We have back here more EMI EQs and Decca stereo tube compressors and Helios and Pies. And just a lot of kind of esoteric gear. Cooper time cubes, which I love, which is basically a garden hose with the speaker on one end and a mic on the other. And you run a voice through that thing and it sounds incredible. And it really does. Here are some of the guitar amps we have. We have 3 Dumbles. We have old AC30s. We have Ampeg flip tops. We have Tweed Deluxes. We have Watkins. We have Marshall Plexis and Marshall Super Leads. An old tube Whirly there, or Rhodes, I'm sorry. And hopefully every color you need to make your record. That's the key. This is a rack for each player that's on the session. They get their own little 24-channel mixer. It's got 16 faders. And in the 1 and 2 usually be a left-right from the console, then the left, kick, snare, hat, bass, more me's. So they can make their own mix in the headphones, which is really nice. Reverb returns and talk back over here. There's a little built-in table. If you need a works deal, you've got a Crown D75, 4 pairs of headphones, and if you need a music stand, there you go. So that's another way the players get to hear themselves just like they want to hear themselves.
Just like they want to.
And what's in here is 138,646 pieces of 1x1 inch wood. And J-Rock's set up right now, who's in here working, but not till later. No 2 pieces of wood are the same length. Sound hits the wall, diffuses, and does not reflect back into the room. Particularly from about 200 to about 5K in that neighborhood. And we have 50 cycle diffusers in the corners. And listening to music in this room, especially surround, it's beautiful.
There are
really
legends